Hey everyone, good evening. Thank you for joining me. Let's dive right in to the topic. So today we are going to talk about product management and AI in 2026. Now we are at the end of 2025. And as PMs, I know a lot of you are already doing annual operating plans for next year. And in that spirit, my take was why not sort of talk a little bit around where product management is going in 2026. So first things first, like a little bit about myself. Uh, I've built AI/ML products for more than 10 years now. Started with housing.com, which is a online classifieds platform. Built the data science team at Upgrad, led recommendations at MX Player. At Flipkart, I was leading voice search and shopping assistant. And then Unacademy, I was looking at search homepage recommendations, etc. And finally, for last 3 years, I've been working with pmcurve, where we have launched an AI product, which is PrepLoop AI. It's an AI interview coach. We are also in the process of building an adaptive learning platform for PMs. And then we have built an AI product management program, right? So that's basically my introduction when it comes to AI ML products. In terms of the second recurring theme is, of course, like helping PMs, which is the reason we are doing this session. So it started with the newsletter 5 years back, culminated into a book, Tech Simplified, which got decently popular in PM circles in India. And then last 3 years, I built PM Curve and PrepLoop. It's something that we are focusing on right now. So this is like the broader theme and broader sort of introduction about myself. Now, I know most of you have gone through these questions. I'm going to take a pause and let you read this. Right? And I also want you to, like those of you who have already read it, if you feel there are some more questions that need answering, I'd be happy to take those questions and club it with one of these, right? So please feel free to put it in chat throughout this session. In fact, like whenever you have questions, please put it in chat and I pick questions from the chat, or I will pick it towards the end of the session. My team actually manages the chat, so I'll pick it towards the end of the session. Right? So these are the 9 questions we are going to cover. First of all, like we start with very fundamental question, which is like, where does this PM function sit? In a world where engineering can do product management, engineering can design can do engineering, design can do product management, PMs can write code and PMs can design, right? So where does everybody like adjust themselves, right? So that's the first question. And then we move on to like, what sort of skills are relevant? What sort of skills do you need? What sort of new skills do you need? And then we keep moving towards these questions. We'll go to these questions one by one. Uh, Honestly, like, and my sense is in 1.5 hours, we'll be able to cover most of them, if not all. Right. So I'm just looking for if there are any questions. I would also want you to, so I normally run polls, but this poll I've not created. So I'm going to sort of ask a very simple question, which is, are you an aspiring PM? If you're an aspiring PM, just do a thumbs up on this. And if you're a seasoned PM, which is mean you're already a PM, you can do a thumbs up on this. Just want to get a broad ratio. So yeah, I think we have a decent sample size. 21 folks, it's 80% seasoned PMs, 20% aspiring PMs. That's normally the mix that my sessions see. So that's good to know. Okay. So first thing first, like before we start, in fact, like these are very thorny problems. Like it's not that you can just, it's not very objective to answer these questions. And one of the things that actually helps while uh, sort of answering very, very subjective problems is to first, like we define some framework or approach that we are going to take. And this is the approach that I want you to take when you are thinking about product management cross AI for the next 1 year. The first thing that we need to understand is like, we need to build new mental models of the changing world. So this is like one of the concepts that you'll read in psychology. And this is something that even Charlie Munger used to write a lot about, which is we need to have a set of mental models coming from different areas. Like it could be history, it could be economics, it could be psychology, it could be biology, it could be mathematics. But these are like set of fundamental laws. And if you understand these fundamental laws, you can understand the world better by mingling them, right? So somebody who understands maths and biology both can actually invent something which is at the intersection of biology and maths. And scientists actually study this genetic algorithms, right? They are at the intersection of biology and maths and statistics and data science, right? So the point is we need to have some set of mental models. But what I'm also proposing is when the world is changing, these mental models need to change. So they either needs to be modified or you need to create new set of mental models. And to give you simply why you need it is because these are nothing short of like the representation of world in a simplified format, right? So if we want to make sense of this messy world, it's important to have the mental model around the world, how the world works, how our users work, how the domain works, how industry works. Like all these mental models actually come together. And when the world is changing super fast, the problem that happens is a lot of people actually stick to their older mental models and they don't change their mental models according to the changing world. And that creates a lot of problems, right? So that's the first thing. Now, the example of a mental model is this is something Balaji Srinivasan actually wrote a while back, which is AI does not do it end to end, it does it middle to middle. The new bottlenecks are prompting and verifying. A very interesting mental model. And this is a very new mental model because AI was not doing this, let's say 3 years back or 5 years back. But LLMs are actually doing it. And let me explain a little bit like what are the implications of this mental model in the context of product management. So think of writing a PRD, which is something that a lot of PMs are using AI for. Now, when it comes to writing a PRD, if you look at what AI is doing, it's doing the middle part, which is the writing part. But the context part, the instructions part, the asking the right questions, what to write part, that is something that PM is doing. And then once the PRD is created, the verification part is something that PM is doing. So AI is super good at doing like the middle parts of the job, which is like more like extraction and generation of text, extraction and generation of image. But it is not great at like asking the right questions, which is prompting, and sort of saying that this is the right output, which is verifying. That is something that humans have to do for now, right? So this is an example of mental model that can be super useful in any task that you want to talk about, right? So let's talk about, let's say, uh, task tracking, right? Now, a very simple thing. If you look at task tracking, the task creation part and assignment part is something that humans do. But AI can then track the task. It is given a timeline. It can just like follow up with the end user and all that. It can actually track that. But once it has tracked the task, what do you do when it hits a blocker? Like suppose somebody is not responding or something is not happening or something changed in between. The context of the org changed. You still need human intervention to close the loop, close the entire loop if the loop is not closing, right? So that is another place where like you can apply this model and say that this is where humans are needed. This is where AI actually does it well. So this is a mental model, and I want you to keep looking out for such mental models. It's not easy. Like you have to read through maybe thousands of tweets to find something useful. You have to read through, in fact, now it is thousands of blogs to find something meaningful. The reason is because it's very easy to repurpose content. It's very easy to just curate content or ask AI to just write it, modify it a bit, and share it with others. The problem is, whatever AI is saying is mostly like what everybody is seeing in other places as well. So it's not very novel. It's not a mental model, right? It's at best, it's a regurgitation of something that humanity already knows. So I would want you to search the mental models because they are very novel. They can be applied to many situations and they will help you navigate the complex world. The second thing that I want you to think more about in next 1 year is emergent thinking. So you have seen some form of this graph so far in your career, which is to say that there is a challenge and then you do divergent thinking. Now, this is something which design people love a lot. Any creative job, right? Divergent thinking. You think about various options. If you give some task to a designer, he or she is not going to start and create one shot output. They are going to think about 5 different variations that could be solutions to the task. And that is basically divergent thinking. You're taking a problem and you're trying to create multiple solutions. And after that, you do convergent thinking, which is the last part. Now, convergent thinking is basically putting constraints and then finally saying that this is the final output that we are going to get. And then you go out, ship that, and test that. So, convergent divergent thinking is a very popular design thinking sort of paradigm that most PMs know of. I want you to focus on something in middle, which is emergent thinking. And the reason I'm saying is creative. Let's get to the definition of creativity, right? So creativity is something novel, something which is created. It's not something that has been created and you're just consuming it. And in creativity, what we'll often hear is don't judge the answer too fast, which is like just try to come up with 5 or 6 different options. And then look at all those options because it is very hard to solve any creative problem in a linear way. Okay. Now, we just said that we are living in a world where rules are changing. Now, when rules are changing, we have to create new rules, right? When you're creating new rules, new patterns, when you're trying to find newer things, it is very, very important to understand this emergent thinking where rather than arriving at a single answer, you will try to arrive at different answers. And then you'll try to do pattern matching and say, okay, what Balaji said actually makes sense because I have tried it on 5 different things and it still works. So the pattern matching has to be done again and again. And by the way, the same pattern matching that actually worked last year is not working anymore. And we'll see that. Like there are enough examples for that in our jobs only. So you have to basically keep your thinking emergent in the sense that you have to look at newer data points every 3 months. And then you have to ask the questions again and again on how the world is changing so that you can have patterns which others won't have, or you can at least be updated about the patterns, right? So this is the second approach that I want you to take while answering these questions, which is in the process of building the mental models. It is actually very, very easy to just have a one certain answer that you heard somewhere on a podcast, on a blog post, or maybe it came to your mind, the first answer that came to your mind, right? It's very easy to just follow that answer. The problem is there is no data to counter it because we are still sort of living in a very uncertain area. But a better approach would be to actually try to sort of do some divergent thinking, try to do pattern matching on various things that you're looking at, and then finally converge into some mental model, right? So example of this is, for example, the cost of AI is provided for certain use cases. I remember doing this session possibly January this year, or maybe like last year, December. And I actually calculated the cost of AI to people and showed that AI is very prohibitive for any Indian support use case. So if you are a PM who is trying to solve support, where the PMF for AI products is actually very, very high, you should not be using it if you're working in India. And now this was a great pattern matching and mental model at that time. But if you look at the cost of the LLMs, it has actually reduced significantly, maybe by 100th. And it is going to sort of keep decreasing as we go. So anything that was not possible a year back is possible now. Any cost that was not possible a year back is possible now. Any calculation that you did a year back actually gets redundant now. And this is what I meant when I say that create your mental models around, let's say, LLM costs, but please keep updating that. Okay. So this is an example of emergent thinking. Now, if you do both, and if you attend this session, I think it's almost like the approach is teaching a person how to fish, and then I'm going to show you fish, right? I'm going to give you some fish so that you can eat meanwhile. But the idea is this is the most important part of this entire session. So I want you to revisit this session, this section of the session again and again, so that you can learn how to fish, so that you don't have to actually go and ask people for fish anymore, right? So let's talk about fish, which is like the key questions and their current thesis that I have. Now, throughout the session, whenever we are going through one question, I will talk about the question. I'll take a pause for a minute or so, maybe 30 seconds. I'll let people put their thoughts. I'll then share my thought process. I'll again ask people to share their thoughts, right? So let's keep it very, very like I said in the post that I wrote on LinkedIn, I want to invite discourse. So rather than doing a one-way delivery, I want to invite discourse, which is a debate, like something where like, some place where people can come and they can share their thoughts and people can get influenced with each other, right? So let's try to make it a discourse in some form. And I think going forward, we'll see how we can make it even richer. But for now, we'll use the chat. Please use the chat and try to answer these questions, right? So the first question is, where does the PM function sit when engineering or design teams can self-serve on specs, prioritization frameworks, and customer insights via AI? What's going to be your answer? Please put it in chat. Okay, so I'm just going to do some readouts that catch my eye. Please pardon me if I miss what you wrote. Translation from business to users and communicating requirements to the team. That's a good thing. My question, the only question I'll ask as a follow-up is, why can't AI do that? Like, why can't you build an agent that can go to talk to users? We have like AI researchers which can talk to users. They can just like send the insights to your engineering team, right? And I'm playing devil's advocate, by the way, folks. Don't take like the questions I'm asking has nothing to do with like contradicting what you said, but because it's difficult to gauge emotion or core needs empathy, and this is like one part I want to emphasize on. I believe that AI has good empathy. In fact, like if you look at, if you talk to like AI as a therapist, you can almost see that it has good empathy. It's not that it can't understand grave needs versus like shallow needs. It can understand that. So it can classify the intent just the way we do. It can actually like figure out which are the key problems. In fact, like one of the large companies has built a product, internal product, which actually looks at all the user reviews and gives you 2 or 3 core insights that you need to build on. Now, without empathy, that's not possible, right? So emotional need, functional needs, of course, AI understands, and people argue that it does not understand the emotional and social needs. My point is, have you tested that? And if not, can you please go and test that? Because I have tested that, and AI can actually show the emotional and social empathy that we have. PMs can focus more on deciding what to build. Again, my question would be, why can't AI decide that given enough data? The roles won't be called design, engineering, PM. That's an interesting one. Orchestrating them, again, something that AI is good at. There'll be greater disciplinary compression with more overlap between function. That's an interesting one. I'm going to build on that. Adding value to user side and business side, understanding them, evaluation of LLMs, alignment, bringing it all together. PMs will be responsible for finding the right problem, can act as validator and initiator. Again, the middle part. And there are some more but okay. But yeah, great. Thank you for this engagement. Tons of, we can focus on what we build is right, verify, and all that, right? And there is one question: how do you define empathy, right? So empathy, think of it like this: we tend to feel that empathy is a very, very abstract concept, right? But empathy is nothing but basically looking at 5 things that a person is feeling, talking to them, and if they tell you these 5 things, can you say which one of them are actually bothering them more? Because that's exactly what we do, right? And which is where, like, you can see that empathy can be taught. In fact, like, people learn by seeing other empathetic people, and there is research that empathy can be taught, not to all, and to some extent there are some limitations, but empathy can be taught. And when we say empathy can be taught, what does it mean? It means that there are mechanics of empathy that can be taught. And the simplest way to check whether LLMs can understand empathy is by giving them like 5 different sentences on how you are feeling and asking them if they can understand how you are feeling. Because if they can understand that, they can quantify the pain of the user, which is the job of a PM. And if they can quantify the pain of a user, they can actually sort of prioritize some features, right? So let's get to the sort of thesis. So the thesis around this that I have is complexity of the job will determine who does it. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit around. Let's unwrap that, right? So all of you will agree with me when I say that the goal of a business is to solve problems in unique ways so that you can build profits. It's something which Porter said in 1980s, and it has been true since. It's one of the those laws of business that everybody follows. Now, Porter also wrote that differentiation commands profits. Whereas if you build same products, it becomes a commodity. And commodity deteriorates any sort of profit, which is why in commodity products, there is only volume, but margin is very, very less, right? So differentiation commands profit, sameness deteriorates it because the competition increases, rivalry increases, and you can go into like Porter 5 forces and say that, okay, differentiation is what we need. To build profits, you need differentiation, which means that you need to identify and solve complex problems. Because if everybody can solve that problem, there's no unique advantage that you have as a company or as an organization. Once you understand this, you can reason on top of this to see where AI will help, where AI will fail, or where people will help, people will fail, right? So the first thing that we have to get out of the way is, are high complexity problems easy to solve for AI? Because if AI can solve those high complexity problems, we don't need to solve them. Why do we need to solve them? We can solve some other problems, or we can just go and have fun on the beach. So high complexity problems are hard to solve by AI. Now the question is, this is an assertion, right? But what is the evidence of it? So the first evidence comes in the form of transfer learning. Now, transfer learning is something that I've been very interested in. And part of the reason is because when I was building this course on product sense and strategy, it became vital to the basically creation of that course. Because product sense, I think most of the people I met told me that product sense is hard to teach. And part of the reason is because to a lot of people, it feels like intuition, right? But one of the things that you see humans doing is transfer learning. You can teach them some case studies in one domain, and they can transfer that learning to some other domain. So it's not that you have to exactly you don't teach humans intuition by articulating it, because intuition is often hard to articulate. But you can teach them case studies, you can teach them some frameworks and get them to 70%. And humans are very good at getting to 95%. Which is why if you take a cab driver from Delhi and put that cab driver in San Francisco, the cab driver will take a couple of days, but in a couple of days, they will learn how to operate it in San Francisco. Or the worst problem, which is like take a cab driver from San Francisco, put them in Delhi. I think they will take a month to get habituated, but they can still learn. Now, look at that skill in self-driving cars. Waymo can actually, like, it took 2005 is when Sebastian Thrun built the first self-driving car for Google. And after 20 years, It took us 20 years to sort of move from 97% 95% reliability to 99% reliability. Self-driving cars in 2005 were 95% reliable, by the way. But to get it to 99%, it took us like, what, 20 years. And even today, if I ask you, can I take Wemo and put it in Delhi? The answer is going to be no. So something which humans are extremely good at, transfer learning. They transfer the knowledge of the world. Like that we have a world model and we are able to sort of operate very, very efficiently with that world model in certain skills, right? So the underlying mechanics of the domain or the world model is not something that AI is great at, which is why, like, if you look at image creation tools, they are pretty bad. They will put like 5 legs, 3 hands, 10 fingers and all that, because they don't have the underlying understanding of the domain. And which is where, like, scientists are also advocating that we need to go to neurosymbolic AI, which is like, it's fine if you don't understand. It's just, they're just saying that we need to add guardrails or rules, which is symbolic AI, to the neural networks that we have built, right? And AI needs some world model. Now, the problem is, it's very easy to say AI needs a world model. It's very difficult to give AI the world model, because that becomes a research problem. That's not like one day we decide that we have to give AI the world model and we are able to do it the next day. It requires immense amount of research and some breakthroughs, just like we had in 2012 with AlexNet, some breakthroughs, or 2017 with transformers, so that we can give AI the world model. But so far, based on the current technology, LLMs, AI is bad at understanding underlying mechanics of a domain. The second thing is, even in reasoning, where like we have given so much compute to AI, we can see that AI has limits to reasoning. So Apple published this paper in 2025, June 2025. And this is a paper that I advise everybody to read whenever they come and talk me about like how AI is going to take away their jobs. Because this paper actually is very, very systematically analyzing on what happens when you keep throwing more and more reasoning tokens, more and more compute to AI. It actually does not improve. After a while, it just tapers, or sometimes it gets worse. This is unlike humans, to whom if you give enough time for a problem, they will actually end up solving that problem, right? So this is like the second thing that, and these are the reasons why you'll see the lack of transfer learning and the lack of world model and the lack of reasoning beyond a certain point is why AI will find it hard to solve high complexity problems. And you already see this proof in your work, right? Like, it's not that AI can generate a simple PRD that you can just send to your VP. You still have to read it. You still have to verify it. And you'll still see some silly mistakes done by AI, which normally like an intern would not do. So that is the first reason. The second reason is humans find it hard to become a polymath. Polymath is somebody who can be very good, strong designer, strong mathematician, strong PM, strong developer. And the reason is because we have limitations of our working memory. Like, the working memory consists of short-term memory, whatever information we can hold in our short-term memory and reason with it, right? So you'll see PMs who are very good at like coming up with idea. They usually hold all the data in their working memory, not on the slides, not on the decks. They remember the numbers, they remember the context of the org, they remember the strategy somebody else took, and they blend all of that together to critically think of a strategy that is very hard to beat. Now, those are the best PMs. Those are the PMs with best product sense and strategy. But the problem is our working memory has a limitation. So you ask the same PM to become a great coder, it will be very hard for that PM to become a great coder. You take a great coder, ask them to become great PM, it will become very hard for them to become a very great PM. So due to limitations of our working memory, we can't be polymaths, which is the thing people are telling you about. That, developers can just like look at PRDs, and PRDs can be written by AI and developers can ship the products. No, it's not that simple. The simple thing to remember is our functional roles move to high complex tasks. So for example, if there is a landing page that needs to be made, of course, you don't need designer. You don't need developer. You can just go to Lovable. You can just vibe code a simple page. And not just you, a developer can do that. Marketer can do that. Why? Because that's a low complexity task where AI is mostly reliable. But when it comes to high complexity tasks, that is where you need expertise. In fact, the only advantage, in fact, one of the seven powers, if some of you have read Hamilton Hammer's book, Seven Powers, one of the seven powers is cornered resource. Now, cornered resource is nothing but you having experts which nobody else has. And that is a clear moat and differentiation for any business. So the argument that this expertise, this differentiation, whether in product or engineering or design, is not going to matter actually falls flat, because businesses fundamentally survive through differentiation. And to create that differentiation, you need good experts, good resources, right? Now, the matter of the fact is, so that just means that no, of course, like the engineers are not going to do PMs are not going to do engineers. There is going to be some overlap though. If it is a simple enough task, anybody can do it. Because that's one thing AI does beautifully, which like it can make you an average writer, an average PM, an average developer, an average poet, in fact. Poetry is something that I used to take a lot of pride in my life before LLMs came, that I can write poetry, I can rhyme things. And then everybody can now become an average poet. So it can make you average at everything. But that just means the bar moves for every domain. Nothing else. Okay. So that's the first question for all of you. Seven Powers. So there is a question around like first power. So Seven Powers is a book which talks about like, majorly it's talk about how Netflix built its defensible moat, but it talks about seven things that companies use to create defensibility. And defensibility ultimately leads to profitability, right? Or like long-term sustenance. And one of the powers is cornered resource, which is any proprietary technology or any proprietary people or any experts that somebody has, right? So in that way, if you see, right, talent density is a direct determinant of a company's success. That comes from cornered resource, because you have a talent density or you have like the kind of people who other companies cannot replicate. And that's why like you are at advantage to beat the market, right? So that's basically seven powers. Okay, let's come to the second question. What skills remain relevant for PMs? What new skills must PM develop? And this will answer the question which Ripan asked, which is what is a complex task for a PM? The most important skill is deciding what to build. I agree. Domain expertise. Okay, that's a loaded term, but I agree. Orchestrating towards a common goal. New skill, tech literacy. Okay, new skill is tech literacy. I agree. Reading, yes. Accountability, yes. Agency is a term I would like to use for accountability. Better judgment, of course. Domain expertise, asking the right question, of course. Knowing what not to build, of course. Improving working memory. That's an interesting one. I think a lot of good answers, by the way. Relevant, understanding user needs. And okay. So let's put a framework around it, right? Let's put something that we can keep using again and again. And the mental model is basically it's the middle work. So writing first draft of PRDs, number crunching, synthesizing research. There was a time when like taking all the Play Store reviews and sort of like segregating them was a big task, by the way. Like I remember it in one of the jobs I had, like I took at least 3 to 4 days to just create a good synthesis. With AI, I think that's just like 3 hours job, or maybe like even 1 hour job, right? So AI eats the middle work. Like this summarization, number crunching, first draft of PRDs, AI kind of takes that away. But there are some skills which become relevant. And rather than talking about skills, let's talk about a little like abstract skills, meta skills, because from meta skills, you can almost derive like what are the skills that are relevant. Now, to understand meta skill, like this is a meta skill. Judgment is a thinking about thinking is a meta skill. Learning how to learn is meta skill. Judgment is a meta skill, right? And judgment is again a very loaded term. So which is where like judgment is normally a function of your domain expertise, user knowledge, you knowing how to build. Because if you don't know, so often people confuse judgment as making quality decisions. My problem is you can't make quality decisions if you don't know the process of building. You can't manage something if you can't do that thing. All right. So which is why how to build becomes a part of judgment. How to grow. Now PMs are too much concerned about building, and I'm telling you that bottleneck is moving to growth. Going forward, growing products is going to be a key mandate. And Airbnb already made that shift from PM to PMM, but I think a lot of companies are going to do that. Right. So how to grow is also part of a judgment. And then finally, how to differentiate and defend, which is strategy. So domain knowledge, user knowledge, building, growing, and being strategic, right? All of these create better judgment. Like if you look at even in business, right? Best business decisions are not taken by somebody who has better decision making. In fact, you can put a person out of Flipkart, put them in Razorpay, and they can become a terrible decision maker. Why? It's not that they're not smart anymore, right? So we often equate judgment with smartness, which is not true actually. It's just that they don't have the right domain knowledge, the right user knowledge. They don't know how regulatory products are built, how regulatory products actually grow, and what is the strategy around differentiating and defending the regulatory products. So please don't equate judgment or product sense with smartness. It's not. Actually, it's a very like doable thing. Anybody can build their judgment given enough time and enough energy to learn these things, right? And these are the meta skills, by the way, the top level skills that become relevant. The first is judgment or taste. We are talking a lot about product taste. It's nothing but like judging whether a design is good or bad, judging whether like a decision is good or bad. And judgment is often like basically it is basically the not the middle part, right? So it is asking the right questions and verifying the ability to verify something. Now you cannot verify something if you don't understand that very, very well. So expertise is basically precursor to judgment, right? And this is one thing that not enough people are understanding, which is we feel that AI makes everybody productive. But I'll show you research, which will actually show that it makes people counterproductive also. But further, if you do first level, like first principles reasoning, you'll realize that people who don't have very solid judgment, AI will actually be counterproductive to them. The reason is they cannot ask the right questions and they cannot verify what AI is telling them. So any plausibly good answer is something that they're going to take out of it and they're going to implement it. And product is a function where the loops are longer, feedback loops are longer. So it is going to be 3 to 6 months or 12 months away when everybody realizes that the 5 product calls that this PM took are not good calls. Why didn't they realize that yet? The reason behind that is that AI kind of changes that game, right? So if you had expertise and you're not that great at expertise, you both had to do a lot of grunt work to move in the world pre-AI era. With AI, people with judgment get, let's say, 2x better. People without judgment gets half better. And that gap actually widens, right? So AI is not a leveler. In fact, it's a multiplier. And depending on the initial number that you are at, it can multiply either way, right? So if it was -1, it can become like -1 multiplied by 4. It was +1, it will be +1 multiplied by 4. So judgment becomes a core meta skill. The second is how to AI and prompting, knowing how to use AI. Now, this is something that a lot of PMs are actually invested in, and that's good. But I want you to move beyond, just taking somebody else's prompt and putting it in your product. Because one thing that you'll realize is like prompts have sensitivity. So a prompt that works very, very well for any like PM influencer or any other PM will not work in your domain. So the only way to make super good prompts is to write personalized prompts for your domain and verifying them continuously, rigorously, right? So how to AI and prompting becomes like a meta skill. Problem solving becomes very, very important because the differentiation comes from places where AI can't solve the problem. AI has its limitation, as we saw. Now, AI cannot solve 5 problems, and it frees up time for everybody. So everybody is trying to solve those 5 problems. Now, the ones with strong problem solving skills are going to solve that problem. Again, something that was not very obvious in pre-AI era, but now it's very obvious. And the last thing is deliberate practice, which is intentionally choosing which tasks to handle manually to improve your expertise. Now, this is very, very important. And the reason this is important is because new research is coming which shows that our cognitive decline is real when we start using AI. If you start writing with AI, if you start sort of drafting emails with AI, it's almost like you stop going to the gym, or you went to gym and you moved from 5 kg sort of dumbbells to 1 kg dumbbells. It's not going to improve your muscle, right? And similarly, if you're not deliberately practicing on problems, it is not going to improve your judgment. It is not going to improve your prompt. It is not going to improve your problem solving skill. So deliberate practice, choosing to do things. For example, one of the things that I love doing is writing. And any PM who comes to me and says that, at least in my team, if any PM comes and says that, Deepak, I'm going to get this PRD, first version written via AI, I'm like, please don't do that. And the reason you don't do it is because the goal of a PRD is not to write a document. It is to think. A PRD is a thinking tool. It's not documentation. Documentation ke liye you can use LLM. Once you have written the first draft, you can use LLM to improve upon it. But please don't use AI to write PRDs. It is just going to make you very, very cognitively like, it is going to decline your cognitive power. And before you know it, it's almost like that frog in the boiling water, right? Like the temperature keeps rising, the frog does not know it's rising. And by the time it knows the temperature is beyond its what it can bear, it's too late. Please don't be frogs in the boiling water. Please improve your judgment, taste, prompting skill, problem solving skill by deliberately picking complex problems and working on them. As like Jensen Huang said, AI is not going to replace people. People using AI are going to replace people. And that's happening, by the way. So just to sort of say, like these skills, these are the skills that become very, very relevant. And you can see this almost happening with data, right? This is a data from 180 million jobs that Bloomberry did. And it saw that jobs that required execution, low-key execution, they are getting down. Like you'll see these illustrators jobs are down by 20-30%. And a lot of like just execution first jobs are gone. Whereas you see these creativity, strategy, expertise-led jobs are actually more resistant to AI disruption. And I'm here to tell you, PM is nothing but expertise-led job. In fact, there is no need for a PM to exist if it is not an expertise-led job. Because engineers can code, like designers can design. What is a PM going to do? PM is not there to just orchestrate and convince people. A PM is there to make judgment, which most people cannot take the judgment around because the PM is sitting at the cross-functional sort of knowledge, domain knowledge, user knowledge, and a lot of other forms of knowledge, right? So this is a data just to support like what we have been saying, that these meta skills, they are more like creative, strategic, expertise-led, and these are going to be very, very resistant to AI disruption. Let me see if there are any questions and I'll move forward. I think Mahtab has a very good comment. Mainstream question, but how to How to build judgment or taste. Again, building judgment and taste, I think it already got answered. This is how you do it. But I can take this question in more detail towards the end of the session if needed. Just marking it. Generalist role would not be ideal in the current AI world. Yes, generalist role is not ideal in the current AI world. That is true. Contrarian view, it is imperative to embrace ambiguity and synthesize judgment across disciplines or domains. You can't be limited by expertise. The focus then shift on how can I upskill or gain that insight quickly. AI helps with this. It's not contrarian actually, like embracing ambiguity and sort of making a decision in that is actually judgment. Because if you have all the data to make the decision, there's no difference in quality of decision that two people can make, is it? So the difference exists in first, like looking at the right data, looking at the right sort of data to identify problems. That is one part of judgment. And the second part of judgment is actually sort of looking at 5 problems and then prioritizing it in absence of all the data available, right? Now, follow-up question is why is generalist role not useful? And the reason for that is, you remember what we talked about working memory, right? Now, working memory, if you think about it, a generalist is somebody who does not have any specific knowledge, a very, very deep specific knowledge, but somebody who can just who is a good problem solver, nothing else, right? Now that skill in itself is very, very valuable, but that is a necessary condition, not a sufficient condition. If you look at the set of things that we saw, because the thing is, if you don't have enough context, if you don't have judgment, what is going to happen is a PM who is a decent problem solver is going to use AI to make a lot of decisions that you can otherwise not make. If you don't have domain knowledge, if you don't have deep technical knowledge, if you don't know how to use AI in the best format. So that is what we mean when we say that a generalist is not something that is going to succeed a lot in the world. And we are already seeing the proof of it in the jobs that people are sort of posting, which is companies are saying that you have to be a builder PM, right? Builder PMs are on the rise because they don't want you to just, sit and look at data and do conversations here, make some decisions. That is basically the old model of product management. Now they're like, can you sort of start building stuff so that there are parts that you can build yourself? There are nuances that you can understand that was not possible in the previous world. And then there are other things that you can do in your role. So it's not that generalists are not going to survive in this world. It's just that generalists need to build these newer set of skills to be relevant, right? Just like being a generalist is not going to cut it. That is what we mean when we say that generalist is not going to survive in the new world. So let's talk about productivity, right? And there is a comment which says that, of course, AI makes us productive. And I'm here to actually argue against it. So the thesis, whether AI makes you productive or not, is actually depends on how good you already are at your job and how well do you know AI. If these two conditions are met, actually AI will make you more productive. But all the data that you'll see, by the way, it actually has not proven yet whether AI makes you more productive. So all the feedback from users, if you talk to people and ask them whether AI is making them productive, they say yes. But when you look at actual data, it does not, with reasonable doubt, actually, that's a quote from courtrooms, but it does not beyond a reasonable doubt proves that it actually improves productivity. And when I say productivity, let's talk about specific things, right? So for example, writing documents, data analysis, research synthesis. This is where people will agree that it actually gives significant savings in time. But meeting summaries is something that you could have written by spending 2 more minutes. So we love meeting summaries because we are lazy by nature. We don't want to do that. But otherwise, it just takes 5 minutes to write a meeting summary. So it does not have a massive impact. In fact, I can see in some cases where it has actually it deteriorates because people don't pay much attention in meetings anymore. So there are second degree effects which we are not seeing yet, which we will see in next couple of years. Stakeholder conversations, it can help you role play and figure out like how to speak if you are actually being earnest. Status updates, it can write very, very quickly. But then comes user conversations, which I think we should be spending more time in because we are saving time elsewhere. Strategy reviews, stakeholder alignment. These are the things which are like either deeply human, and I say deeply human, not just follow-ups, not just status updates. These are either deeply human or very complex things. So when somebody said that, AI cannot have empathy, I will now partly agree with that. And the reason is if we change the definition of empathy, which is empathy is me talking to, let's say, Saurav. And when I'm talking to Saurav, one of the things that I have always told PMs is please don't do user research conversations on Zoom or phone calls. If possible, please meet the person. And the reason is evolutionarily, we are programmed to read a lot of signals of how somebody speaks, their eye twitching at some point or mouth twitching or like them being uncomfortable and all that. There are millions of data points that our brain processes when we talk to users in front of them. That level of empathy, AI has not been able to reach, and it will be very difficult to reach. But like I said, low complex user conversations it can do. Same for sales, right? It can qualify a lead, but you cannot put it in a sales conversation. It can qualify a lead by asking, what is your preference, where do you live, and all that. It can qualify a lead, which is basically the low complex task, but it cannot go and do deeply human, deeply complex tasks, right? So this is, let's define productivity. And now let me ask a question to you. There are two PMs, X and Y. X writes PRDs. Actually, write PRD I should remove. X creates user stories, sends status reports, updates dashboards, follow-ups with stakeholders. Y is chasing some growth targets, has to get in buy-in for some new initiatives, brings user insights on the table, has to convince business to do things. Who is going to be more productive because of AI? X or Y? Okay. I'm saying, look at the job scope and tell me like who is going to be more productive. There are people who are saying Y. The answer is X, right? If I was spending 10 hours doing whatever X was doing, now it can be done in 2 hours, right? So 80% job is done. For Y, the job is not done. So let me ask you a very fundamental question. If a PM says they're very productive due to AI, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Very productive, okay? Not productive. Now, the thing is, Y also needs to do what X is already doing in real world. We know that, right? It's not that Y is just doing that. Y is doing X plus Y in a real world. But somebody who is doing X plus Y is spending 100 hours. Their 20 hours are saved. Somebody who is just doing X, their 80 hours is saved. And X can claim that I'm very productive due to AI. And I would be like, it's a bad thing, actually. Please pick some work that AI cannot do, because if you folks are able to take the PRD generated by AI and get a buy-in from stakeholders and get it shipped, I would fear for my life. Like I'll fear for your jobs, whether your jobs are safe or not. Right? If you are going to tell me proudly that Deepak, half of the work that I was doing AI is anyway doing, and I'm just sailing through, I would be worried. I would say, okay, please relook at what you're doing and please change whatever you're doing, because it does not look like it is actually good for you in next couple of years. So productivity is a two-edged sword through AI, right? Once you understand that, I think rest of the discussion becomes easier, because what I want you to also give is some data points for you to take away and sort of work on it, right? So one data point is AI productivity gains are uneven. So McKinsey reported this: 88% of companies deploy AI, but only 6% qualify as high performers. And the bar is not even very high. High performers are those who attribute a beta impact of 5% or more on AI use. When we are saying AI will just replace us, it does mean like more than 100% impact, right? Like we are not even seeing 5% or more impact in 6% of companies. The second data point that I want you to take, and we'll talk about what they mean, what they imply. Second data point I want you to look at is basically, this is like Atlassian State of Product 2026, very updated. And they say that product teams are able to win up to 2 hours a day with AI. But when we ask them, what aspect of your role are you unable to spend sufficient time on? Strategy is not something that they are able to spend time on. Data analysis, again, is not something that they are able to spend time on. Skill building, they're not spending time on. Innovation, experimentation, they're not spending time on. Customer research, 30% are not able to spend sufficient time on. And if I ask you folks, what will survive? You will literally say like, these are the skills that are going to survive Deepak, right? So the point is, while, and by the way, it's not that product teams are not using AI, right? They're not aware of AI. So if you look at the frequency of usage, almost 60% PMs are using it on a weekly basis in documentation. And let's look at weekly, because see, all of these things we do weekly. We don't do like documentation daily, right? Competitive research we do monthly. And on a monthly basis, it's still 60%. Product analysis weekly is still like 31%, which by the way is something that bothers me, because there is a lot of good AI tools which can do NLQ, natural language analysis, and you should be sort of using those. Customer feedback analysis, again, something where I feel like we are on the lower end. But it's also something that companies don't do often, right? Customer feedback, how often do you actually go and talk to customers and get feedback? Maybe once a month. So on a monthly basis, you still see 60% PMs using it, right? So point is like, if you look at the frequency of AI usage, it's actually good. It's not bad. Like 60, 70, 80% of PMs using it weekly on multiple things is not bad. But as for gains to do the real work, there's not much, right? And this is where like I would also call out one more data point, which is history. If you look at history, it will tell you that speed is not a sufficient condition for productivity. Like spreadsheet came, it made like all the modeling 20x faster. Did finance move 20x faster? No. Did we require less, like 20x lesser analysts? No. Same for news, right? We went after 24-hour news cycle, but did the quality, did news, the entire market size of news increased? Possibly not, because the quality degraded. So the thing is, when speed becomes a solvable problem, quality becomes a bottleneck. That's what history teaches us. And which is where I'm saying, when speed is not anymore a problem, the quality, the judgment, which is a precursor to quality, is going to be the core skill, right? And the sad thing is, we are not spending enough time on judgment. And even if like we are able to win back some time. Okay, I'll close this entire bit of productivity with one last thing, which is more outcome oriented. Productivity is always like time based, time based, time based. But I would like to measure productivity with outcomes. And HBS did this study with 640 business owners. And this is not older one. This is like September 29. And what it did was it gave one set of owners AI. The other set, they gave them the business guides and business books. And when the study concluded, they saw no significant difference in business performance. If AI is helping with decision making, if AI is helping you move critical things, why would access to AI not actually be beneficial to you to some extent? So that's where I said, like, we have this anecdotal evidence that AI actually helps in improving productivity. But as for proof, there's not much. And I'll tell you why. Because it is a function of two things. And both of the things need to be questioned again and again in next 1 year. How good you are already at your job. And second, how well do you know AI? So people who are extremely good at their job, they're not using AI much, which is a tragedy, really. People who are not good at AI, they're using AI too much, which is another tragedy. And we need to get PMs in the ecosystem to be great at their jobs and also understand AI deeply. It's not like the sufficient condition is a combination of both, not one or the other. Okay. Now, when it comes to how to use AI, this is a good list, right? Uh, understand how to build workflows, understand how to see, for example, this one 45% saying, I don't trust the accuracy or reliability of AI generated outputs. Now, this should not be there in the survey for PMs. Because, of course, you don't trust accuracy and reliability of AI generated outputs, but that should not stop you from adopting AI. The only reason why it will stop you from adopting AI is if you don't have very strong judgment. Because AI is not that dumb also, right? I actually agree with Mahatab's point, which was it actually helps you. It's not that it does not help you. It helps you tons. But for that, you need to have a very strong judgment. Uncertainty about tool usage and effectiveness. Again, something that PMs need to master. Lack of access to tools, 30%. How can it be, right? Lack of training or knowledge, 25%. How to create effective prompts, 20%. Right? So I believe that the future is already here. In fact, one of my favorite quotes is actually like, the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed. If you have to look at future, you have to start looking at AI native companies. Now, there is a reason to look at them. There is a reason to not look at them. The reason to look at them is because they tell you where we are moving. You look at OpenAI, how OpenAI is structured, how Claude is structured. You look at how Cursor is structured. You look at how many 1%, 10%, $10 million companies are getting formed today. And that should scare you a little bit. At the same time, please don't do apples to oranges. All these companies, they are fundamentally platforms, AI platforms. Of course, AI platforms will have a very different structure as compared to AI applications. So most of the world is going to be at AI application, right? AWS, for example, AWS is a platform, right? Now, AWS will definitely have a very different, fundamentally different structure as compared to applications built over it. Most of you are going to get impacted by the application layer. So please worry about the application, how the AI, the product teams which are operating in AI application area are actually performing, right? Please have a look at that and please learn how to use AI. Okay. So I would say like, see, we are 80% there in the sense that most of the mental models that we need, we have. And now we will be very comfortable answering these questions. I have some data points at some places which will help you build conviction or break conviction. But barring that, I think we can reason a lot of these things. For example, this question, which is how does PM to engineer ratio change? Does the headcount of PMs increase or decrease? Now, this is Andrew Ng writing in January 2025. As coding becomes more efficient, teams will need more product management work. Engineer to PM ratio could flip 2:1. Yeah. Right? But let's talk about engineers, right? So for example, one productivity research done actually showed that everybody overestimated the productivity gains through AI. But when they actually gave this task to developers, there was 25 to 30% more time taken to do these tasks as compared to when there was no AI. So productivity actually dipped for developers when they were using AI. And by the way, this is not in silos. I know developer friends who have benefited immensely from AI, but I also know developer friends who don't use AI. They have used AI, they have gone back to their older ways. Right? At the same time, you also see that developers are using AI a lot for all these use cases. This is from Google. So very reliable and all that. A lot of developers are using it for writing new code, but I think one case where I have seen like very seasoned developers using it is in debugging, right? Because you don't have to go through every line of code and it can actually understand the system and give you like plausible explanations very, very fast. Now, the thing is, if there are contradictions there, I would say even this statement is not beyond contradiction, right? But let's assume that, see, we know that we know from our experience also that it does improve productivity. Like there are products I could not have built in like 2 years back. In fact, the first version of this entire PrepLoop AI was vibe coded by me. I'm not an engineer, but I still was able to build a workable product, give it to end customers, and seek feedback from there. Right? So there are things that AI makes possible. There are like places where it makes you much, much more productivity, both in terms of capability and time saved. And this is why like I want you to take a very, very segmented approach. So let's talk about growth, for example. If you look at growth, PMs can build experiments in growth. Because if it's just a color change, it can be done by AI, right? Engineers also get faster. In fact, growth engineers or growth designers, if you see, they're very, very fast with iterations. With AI, they will become even more faster if they build the right workflows, right? So engineers per PM will reduce, which means more number of PMs will be needed. 0 to 1 on startups, again, both PMs and engineers can ship. Now, the question is, we don't know whether engineers per PM will reduce for sure, but we don't know whether engineers will start doing a little bit of PM job or not. My sense is they will start doing that, both in growth and 0 to 1, right? So it could be that a PM is doing both or an engineer is doing both. But the matter of the fact is you'll need both because there will be some high complexity tasks which PM can only do. And there will be some high complexity code that engineer can only do, right? But the overall output is going to change significantly for growth and 0 to 1 startups. Infrastructure or platform teams or enterprise, if you see, that is where like the complexity is too much. If you look at Flipkart's code base, it will have tens of millions of lines of code. And reliability matters a lot. A simple like mistake can actually like lead to hundreds of crores of revenue loss. You don't want to do that, right? So AI will be used there, but my sense is like they're like PMs to engineer issue is mostly going to be constant. Or if anything, maybe we'll need less PMs in those places. Enterprise, same, like reliability, stakeholder navigation matters more and all that. But again, see, these are like a little bit of speculations, right? Based on experience and also based on some principles which we know true, right? We know that in growth features, we know what the shape and form of growth features are. If you have managed growth teams, you realize that yeah, half of those features could be done by PMs. In fact, some features were done by PMs at Upgrad when we actually introduced Optimizely, because Optimizely allowed them to actually change text by themselves. So we know that when empowered, growth PMs can do a lot of things. So startups and growth teams are going to see that shift. And by the way, like if you look at these teams where you have lesser PMs, for example, Cursor does not have PMs, right? Now, the matter of the fact is in Cursor, I believe every engineer is a PM because it's almost like building a product for yourself. I mean, you're the best PM that is there. I cannot go and become a PM at Cursor. It will be a very, very difficult job because I'm literally working with my user to build product for them, right? So I would ask you to be very, very function and product specific when answering this question. I don't want you to, generalize things. And we will talk about like some of the phenomena that we observe at macro level, right? For example, like one of the things is that Solov's productivity law, right? So in 1980s, when a lot of companies were adopting computers, there was a productivity paradox that got created where the economists studied the productivity increase and there was literally no productivity increase, no matter how much investment in IT was done. Because, and we don't know the reason, by the way, it's just a paradox. We don't understand it. There are reasons for it, and you can go and read about it. But there is no clear explanation of why productivity did not increase in organizations. Maybe it was because of human factors. Maybe like something else became a bottleneck. But no matter what, it's the second degree effects are hardest to sort of predict. Macroeconomics is hardest to predict. So let's not predict it, but let's talk about specific functions and segments and let's reason them out rather than talking about whether, PM engineer ratio will change everywhere. There's no merit in discussing that. right? We can discuss it in context of our org, we can make changes in our org, and we can become a much better PM. That affects your life materially, but there's no point trying to predict the macroeconomic trend that is going to be there, right? But mostly, if we listen to Andrew NG and all, yeah, number of PMs is going to increase is one statement that we see. In some places, the number of PMs is definitely going to decrease. Like in the AI native orgs, we are already seeing that, right? Or developer productivity orgs, we are already seeing that. The next question, how do you evaluate PM performance when AI does the legwork? And the answer again lies in the judgment, right? Ultimately, you are going to evaluate people on the skills that matter a lot. And this is from Amazon, which is leaders are right a lot. And when they say that leaders are right a lot, it's ultimately all about like the judgment quality. How fast can you build with AI? And then can you avoid blunders? Because when you go fast, you can make blunders, right? So you have to be right a lot while shipping faster. And that's almost like driving your car at 120 and still avoiding all the bumps and all the accidents on the road. That is a skill, right? And there are some people who are going to master this skill. And if you don't master it, you are going to, of course, like you're going to feel the pain a little bit, right? Now, there is this comment about like Zerodha and Stripe didn't have PM for really long. See, Zerodha, again, founders are the PMs with a 25 member like team. Do you really need PMs if both founders are actually like very, very strong investors? And so in fact, like in small orgs, founders are PMs because they understand and identify problems that actually matter for the company. Stripe is an interesting case study, by the way. Stripe, again, because it was a developer tool, developers were acting as the PM, is why Stripe didn't have a PM really long. So like I told you, the pockets, if we study from history and if we do some pattern matching, there is good chance that we can understand how things are going to be. We are going to come to what happens to technical controls. But before that, like there are a few habits that I want you to start doing. First of all, even if your manager is not doing this, you should start tracking leaders right a lot. So one thing I recommend to product sense cohorts is decision journaling. Basically document what decisions you are taking, why you are taking. There are 5 or 6 fields that you can figure out for yourself. But please journal your decisions and see how often you're right. The second thing is peer evaluation. Please start taking peer feedback because they often can see your judgment. And in the worst case, like you want them by your side, right? So something that you should start doing. And the third is do a lot of pre-mortems. Pre-mortems are like, simulating your thinking process in future. And the better you can become at simulation, the better you can become at product sense and strategy. So do pre-mortems, do decision logs, and do peer evaluations. And there is a good chance that you'll start improving your strike rate and you'll become one of the leaders who are right a lot, and that will push you into a much better trajectory, right? Now let's talk about PM archetypes. And the first archetype I want to discuss is actually a builder PM. So YC actually published this for their 2025 winter bash that for 25% of startups, 95% of code bases was generated by AI. And they said that vibe coding is a must-have skill. You cannot skip this. This is something which Gary Tan actually said. And we are seeing that impact, by the way. The interview loops are evolving. So if you look at the interview loops now, Google has introduced product sense with AI. Meta has introduced product senses with AI, where they're not just asking you to talk about, the problem, the user segmentation, the prioritization, the solution, and all that. They want you to build something out of it. So whatever solution you're coming with, can you build it in 10, 15 minutes? Because, and you might be wondering, why is that? Like, what is the need of that? It's just like is it because they want to make it more difficult and all that? It's nothing of that. If you ask me as a hiring manager, I feel we have a better way of judging people's product sense than was possible with the questions before. How will you improve Google Maps? Now it's possible to ask a person to actually design something. And when they're designing, I can see how they think. I can see how they take the decisions. I can see whether they notice some problem that AI created or not. I can see how well versed are they with AI. Can they evaluate AI? Can they ask the right questions? In a way, the judgment that we are talking about just became much easier to evaluate in an interview setting thanks to prototyping, AI prototyping. So interview loops are evolving. We are seeing like product sense with AI. I think we are going to soon see, you know, basically how do you use AI to become more productive or workflows and all that. You're going to start seeing those in behavioral questions first, and over time, maybe we'll introduce a new loop. But the thing is, they are evolving. We have seen that in the second half of the 2025, right? And that should help you answer this question, which is, does every PM need to be a builder? And in 2025, by the way, the thing is, it's a moving target. In 2026, and we might have a very different answer to this question. But today, if you are in growth or experimentation, if you are in a 0 to 1 or a startup, if you are in an AI native company, you cannot operate without being a builder. If you cannot use cursor to build something, yeah, it's very hard for you to sort of operate, right? And again, the future is already there. It's not evenly distributed, is also true here. So if you're nodding your head, no, I work in a startup, but this is not happening. I'm saying it's going to come soon, right? So that's one thing. Uh, just a moment. If you are in platform or infrastructure team, right, or enterprise regulated industries, large orgs, I think the place where AI prototyping is helping a lot is, especially like if you have some ops process, internal ops process, it can make the ops process very, very efficient. And you can literally be a builder of all the internal tools and workflows that actually improves the efficiency of your ops processes, right? So internal tools, supply side tools, like wherever the risk is not that high of going wrong, is where PMs will be allowed to do it. Wherever the verifiability is very high. For example, for shipping a product to end users where you have 1 million end users, it's very hard for you to verify that this is written in the right way and it will perform in the production and all that. But to ship it to 1,000 sellers, it's very easy to verify. So wherever like the stakes are not that high, internal tools and all, there I think in enterprise, large orgs, platform or infrastructure teams, that is where like PMs are going to sort of be a builder. So that begs to the next question: which PM architects thrive or struggle, and which new archetypes kind of emerge? And my sense is there are two parallel tracks that are emerging. The first is the builder PM track, and the second is the traditional PM track. Now, builder PM track is going to have less number of layers because it's almost like the engineering architect track, right? You have seen like there is SD 1, 2, 3, EM, senior EM director, and then there is an architect track. So far, PMs didn't have an architect track. It was basically you become a PM, SPM, GPM, you start managing PMs, director of PM and all that. With AI, there is going to be an architect track for PMs, which is a builder PM track, right? And it will have a very high bar. Like if you look at the architects, they are some of the best engineers who love just like building systems, thinking about systems. The same is going to happen here, right? And this kind of track will dominate in growth teams where a single PM can ship, let's say, 10 to 30 features in a month. 0 to 1 initiatives where a single PM can do everything end to end and create very high cycle of learning. Startups, AI native organizations are going to love this kind of PM. And the rest of it, like platform teams, enterprise, regulated industry, large orgs, they are going to have a more layered structure, but they will also have a builder PM track, is my sense. Because there are people already, as we speak, there are teams already experimenting by taking 2 or 3 PMs out of their 20-member team. And they are asking them to just like build and show what is possible. Now, not all of PMs will become that, but these PMs will become builder PMs, even in these orgs, right? So of these two tracks, I think builder strategy 0 to 1, customer obsessed PMs, growth PMs. These are the domains which are going to sort of thrive. Now, the good thing is we are going to see one new archetype, which is builder PM, and a lot of PMs will become builder PMs. But when it comes to technical PM or operator, the role is going to fundamentally change because you have to layer something else. For example, technical PMs can become AI PMs, right? They can build judgment and they can transition into deep tech roles because technical PM was more around translating things from one part of the organization to another part. I'm saying with AI, that becomes very easy for engineers to even translate that, document that, and send that to somebody else. So if you are a technical PM on a deep tech product, of course, like it's not going to change much. But if you are a technical program manager, for example, it's going to change a ton. Program management roles are going to suffer, and which is where operator PM role are going to suffer because AI eats a lot of coordination and process work, not the conviction building and convincing part. Please don't confuse stakeholder alignment with coordination and process work. Right? Stakeholder alignment is a very, very deeply human job and very, very complex job. But that is not the case for just coordination and process and execution work. Right? So execution overall, of course, is a loaded term. Execution also requires alignment and all that. Those parts are going to remain. But if the job was just to sort of, move things around and coordinate and process work, that is going to go down. Which means if 70% of a work of operator PM was this and 30% was alignment, they have to figure out what to do with that rest 70%. Because if they don't figure it out, of 3 PMs, only 1 PM is needed, or maybe 2 out of 3 PMs are needed. Right? And this is further supported by Bloomberg data, which sort of said that execution roles reduced by 33% in 2025. 33%. That's like huge. Okay. So then the last question possibly is, how does this change affect PMs at various levels? Right. And you can almost now predict what I'm going to say. So one thing is there are two trends which are noteworthy. First is middle management is in decline. So Meta started this, but like 20% of organizations will use AI to flatten their structure. This is a prediction in 2026, not far away. Which means any prediction that is closer, you should be wary of, because it's almost like people are seeing that and they're just like guesstimating that. And that guesstimate is going to be very close. Eliminating more than 50% of middle management positions. So if nothing, at least 10% of all middle managers are going to get impacted. And in these 20% of orgs, 50% of middle management is going to get impacted. And you don't have to look further. Like you looked at TCS data. I think it was, I'm not saying it's, please don't judge it like whether it's fortunate or unfortunate. We are doing a very objective discussion, right? It was very unfortunate, but you saw the TCS, like 20 to 30,000 actually middle managers getting laid off because they want to flatten the structure. It happened in Meta, where Zuckerberg was saying that we have managers managing managers, and so on and so forth. So that is one trend. The second trend is entry-level jobs are in decline. In fact, the unemployment rate for freshers has never been high in US. And I think in India, we don't track that data very rigorously. In India, I think the situation is a little better, but it is going to get worse as we move into AI era, right? So there was roughly like 30% drop in entry-level job postings from early 2024 to 2025. And this is like, these are the changes that are happening, right? So if you look at level by level, you can predict why this is happening. Aspiring PMs, for example, the bar is rising dramatically. So rather than hiring a very junior PM, APM, people are rather hiring a PM or SPM who has some experience so that they already have their judgment built and they can use AI to do the job of two APMs. So that is the thinking that hiring managers have. Please don't judge the thinking. Businesses will do what is favorable for them, right? We are nowhere to judge them. We just have to look at facts and just figure out how to sort of deal with it, right? So aspiring PMs, like the bar rises dramatically. ICPMs, again, execution is automated, which means they have to build judgment faster, strategy faster. Senior IC had to move to strategy. Product leaders have to retrain and define their retraining of their teams and hiring of their teams. And VPs and CPOs have to, by the way, like I would say, like their job is toughest for product leaders and VP and CPOs, because they have to learn this new era of building, judgment in AI era, strategy in AI era. They have to think about org structure, retraining, hiring AI native what sort of organization do they want to build, what sort of culture do they want to have. So there is a lot of work at the highest level of the orgs. And if you look at it, what you'll realize is possibly senior IC and product leaders will get compressed. IC PMs and aspiring PMs is going to compressed. And which is why you're seeing lesser roles both in middle management and at the aspiring PM level. Right? So that's one impact. Now the further question is, so does the PM headcount increase or decrease? We talked about productivity, we talked about all these impact, and we talked about PM to engineer ratio, right? So this is the last part, and I want to actually offer some hope. Because if you start with where we started, the goal of a business is to solve problems in unique ways to build profits. What you end up realizing is differentiation commands profits. And the more problems you can solve, the higher the top line and profits. So in a world, if there are enough problems, why would a business want to increase their profits? They would want to reinvest that profits to hire more people to solve more problems. Isn't it? And which is where the thinking is flawed. We tend to think that if the current job of the organization can be done by 50% less people, the org will have 50% less people. That's not how businesses work. Businesses will reinvest that profit, keep the people, and actually sort of do the entire thing. They'll get more markets and more problems. The only businesses that lay off they were already in difficult position. They didn't have good unit economics. So they have to manage their unit economics by laying off. So the companies who could not be profitable, they are going to benefit from it by laying off people. But companies who had good solid unit economics, they're going to reinvest the profits into people again to get more and more businesses across the board. Right? There's also this Zevon's paradox, which says that like, if there is some efficiency, fuel efficiency gains, then the overall fuel use will increase, not decrease. And what that means is, think of a world where software developer, you could hire a software developer at 120K, let's say. But to hire a software developer at 120K, you needed to create value of 1.2 million from that developer. Now, with the previous tools, the productivity was not possible to imitate like 1.2 million gains with 120K investment. With AI, this let's say the developer becomes 3x more productive. Now a business that could not hire this developer can now hire this developer. And same for people who could not afford fuel are now able to afford fuel. So overall fuel consumption is increasing. Whereas fuel efficiency gains meant less number of fuel will be consumed, right? So that assumption actually falls flat at macro level. When we say that, the productivity is increasing, we tend to feel that, it means lesser people, but that's not true. That just means more businesses can now afford people. Or businesses can now get that kind of output from people, which will let them reinvest something else in some other initiatives that they could not. And as long as there are unsolved problems in the world, that is going to be the case, right? Like people are going to, and this shows in this trend, which is like, if you look at the all PM jobs, it is moving up. Like it went to like 4K and it is now at 7K. Nowhere near the peak in 2021, but 2021 was an exception. We all understand that, right? But very close to like pre-2021 era. And we have a new kind of job that is coming, which is like AIPM job. So collectively, like you can say that it has already moved to 7.5K from a peak of 10K, right? And from 4K, it has moved to 7.5K, which is a great improvement, right? And this is the last bit. I think I would let you here to sort of Jensen Huang, who kind of articulates the thing that I was telling in a very, very nice way.
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to go to the punchline. AI is not going to take your jobs. person who uses AI is going to take your job. Do you guys agree with that? Okay, so use AI as fast as you can so that you can stay gainfully employed. Let me ask you the second thing. When productivity increases, meaning we embed AI all over NVIDIA. NVIDIA is going to become one giant AI. We already use AIs to design our chips. We can't design our chips. We can't write our optimizing compilers without AI. So we use AI all over the place. When AI increases the productivity of your company, what happens next? Layoffs? Or you hire more people? You hire more people. And the reason for that is, give me an example of one company that had earnings growth, productivity, because of productivity gains, that said, guess what? My gross margins just went up. Time for a layoff. So why is it that people think about losing jobs? If you think you have no new ideas, then that's the logical thing. Does that make sense? If you don't have any more ideas to invest your incremental earnings, then what are you going to do when the work is replaced, is automated? You lay people off. And so join companies where they have more ideas than they can afford to fund, so that when AI automates their work, it's going to shift, of course. It's going to change the style of working. AI is going to come after CEOs right away. Deans and CEOs, we're so toast.
That was good.
I think CEOs first, Dean second, but you're close. And so you join companies where they have more ideas than they have money to invest. And so naturally, when earnings improve, you're gonna hire more people.
Yeah, that's like broadly what I had for the session. Action items, like the key takeaways should be the middle. Please don't spend your time there. Use AI. Judgment is the moat. Build it. Building with AI becomes essential as we move into 2026. And learning how to use AI becomes even more essential, right? So those are the key takeaways among those. And action items, depending on where you are, is this sheet. For aspiring PMs, you have to learn to build. You have to build a portfolio of shipped prototypes which show judgment, not just like a prototype. It should be something that somebody can look at and say, wow, I didn't think of this, right? Focus on advanced product skills, because APM jobs have suddenly become like strong ICPM jobs, right? So that is where you need to go, and which is where like business people graduating from B schools, they might not have that difficult time because they already have built expertise in something, but people moving laterally are going to have a hard time, right? For ICPM, strong and growth skills become very, very essential. Growth becomes actually very, very essential. AI workflows become very essential, and systems to become better at time with judgment becomes very essential. For senior or lead PMs, you need to integrate AI into your org. You need to integrate AI into your products, and you need to learn how to build AI products. Because as a lead PM, you're not managing just one feature. And at least one of your features will require you to build AI into it. So that means you have to learn how to build AI products, not just like use AI to build products. Further, you folks are the torchbearers of org change. So you want to be part of the change in the org, not like be the part of the problem which does not let an org change. And for product leaders, it's going to be like, what is the new org design in the AI first world? They have to think long and hard about it. They have to think long about changing their hiring process, retraining process. And finally, they have to think about how to become skilled at AI and AI strategy. By the way, there is no becoming skilled at AI strategy without learning AI, because it goes against, you can only manage things that you can do yourself, right? So it's almost like I'm getting a PM from 2005 and asking them to lead now. It does not work that way, right? So yeah, this is more or less what I had for the session. Thank you for joining. Thank you for staying so long.